It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan.
I have real confidence that our football operations can once again create a dominant football team.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which dropped yesterday morning. The new one will come out on Monday morning. And check out their new show, Q&A. Very good stuff, very entertaining. One of the hosts of the Inside the Birds podcast is Adam Caplan, along with Jeff Mosher. Adam is our guest on this Football Friday, football all year long. And it's brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back with everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery. Call 856-MAKEOVER. Adam is with us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on this Football at 4 Friday. How are you, Adam?
Hello, boys. Yeah, and I saw the news. Our man Hunter Brody is starting his own company, it sounds like. Now, Mosher told me, and I need you to confirm this, Hunter. Please confirm this. Are you starting an adult movie studio? Is this true?
Whoa, I told Moshe to keep that quiet.
All right, okay. Well, I mean, he texted me the other day because I was unaware of this. And I was like, wow, we should be doing an article on this. We should have you on our show, and you need to explain this.
That's amazing.
An adult movie studio. I liked it.
Really?
I didn't tell Gil exactly what happened, so now I'm in a pickle here. You know what I'm saying? I kind of told him I was going in a different direction.
All right, yeah. I mean, look, it caught me by surprise. I wasn't sure if you're old enough to do that. I don't know. I'm not prying. I'm not asking.
That's where we start this Friday edition. All right, let's take a look at a couple of things here.
Sure.
I definitely, we're getting to this free agent area. Now, I want to start with this real quick before we kind of look at this roster and where they are.
Yeah.
We know, Adam, that they are way over the cap. They got cap problems galore. Does that restrict them from bringing anybody in free? Like, in other words, they got to bring some people in. They got to change this roster a little bit. So the cap issues they have, can they not bring in a guy to compete for the backup this position or a backup offensive? You know what I'm saying? Like, can they not bring anybody in with where they are cap-wise?
They will be, not right now, but they will by March 17th. They'll be under the cap, and they'll be able to do some small things, some mid-level free agents. I'm not expecting anything big at all. That's just kind of where they're at. Look, the way you win is you build through with your own players, not through free agency, but you supplement through it, and they'll do that. They'll do a little bit of that. Look, they've got a lot of decisions to make, a lot of moves to make. You know, Alshon Jeffrey, Malik Jackson, they'll get those guys off the roster. They already did their pre-restructures, I call it. Deshaun Jackson's already been cut. They could approach other players for restructures to clear up more cap space. Some will get, by the way, they'll do some extensions. That's definitely going to happen. And there are going to be more players probably going to have to move on. Now, I would say this, though. It's probably not going to be as bad as we think it is. The issue, though, is when the dead money hit, when the cap hit hits, when the Wentz trade, see, they have to account for the Wentz trade. That's because, by the way, when that trade goes through, you have that immediate cap hit. Even if they did a post-June 1 designation with it, you have to carry that cap hit through June 1st. You only get two of those. Now, if they don't use a post-June 1 on Wentz, it's a huge cap hit. Jeffrey and Malik Jackson will get the post-June 1. But the problem is when you designate these cap hits to split the hit over 2 seasons, you have to carry it through June 1st. So they've got a lot of work to do. I've been looking at this the last couple of weeks. We'll talk more about it next Friday because we'll still, the free agency doesn't start for 2.5 weeks, but there's some things they can do to move money, do what are called simple restructures with players, guys they know are going to be on the roster for years to come. You want to restructure those players. Where they've screwed up a little bit is restructuring older players, and then the guys get hurt, like Jeffrey. That was a mistake. Or guys who might retire. You got to be careful of that.
All right, so I found it interesting that, how would you describe where this roster is? Is this need a rebuild, rip it down? In other words, hey, let's move on from Fletcher Cox. Let's move on from Brandon Graham. Let's get rid of those veteran players. Or do they say, nope, those guys still have some value. Let's just retool some things and still work around the context of those veterans?
I think it's a combination, Mike, of the latter, the retooling. And let me explain to you what that is from an NFL standpoint, because I remember talking to John Schneider, the Seahawks GM, about this when they moved on completely from the Legion of Boom, their entire secondary. He explained to me that his thing was because their offense was going to be so good. You have Russell Wilson, so you should never have to rebuild. So his thought process was, hey, look, let's take a look at this. Okay, we're gonna have to rebuild our secondary, but we don't have to rebuild the whole roster. That's a retooling. The Eagles, as I understand it, are between a retooling and a rebuild. It goes to what you were talking about the defensive line, about older guys. Okay, they do have two older guys there, in Graham and Cox, but they have Derek Barnett, who is a young guy, Josh Sweat, who's a young guy. They're super young at linebacker. Then again, they don't really have anyone other than Alex Singleton they're probably ready to use anyway. They have to get a little bit younger in the secondary. Must get significantly younger on one side of their offensive line. At running back, they're young. Receiver, they're really young. So that's why it's not the rebuild that I think people are talking about. It absolutely, though, it's a combination, though, of a rebuild and retooling. It's not a complete rebuild. No, I don't see that at all.
Well, you mentioned the defensive line. What about Derek Barnett? Is there an extension in the conversation?
Yeah, I think, Hunter, I don't see them trade him. I just don't. I don't see that. Why do I say that? They don't have anyone else who's ready. Josh Sweat has been a terrific third end. He played more snaps than I think we all expected last season, but in place. He played high-end backup, low-end starter snaps. He's not a start. He's not a full-time guy. He's great in his role. I don't see this in terms of a starter. Now, they could extend his contract. He's eligible to have it done. I don't. Now, the issue with Barnett is, Moshe and I talked about this a year ago, and now we're talking about it again. We both agree that we don't see him playing on this final year of his deal at $10.051 million. It becomes fully guaranteed on March 17th. What you would want to do is extend it, significantly lower his base salary. Obviously, you give him a big signing bonus, which they do, and then make it work. So you could save pretty good cap space with that. I can't imagine, because, by the way, he was the Seahawks, one of a bunch of teams to call at the trade deadline, and they were told he was not available. So I just don't see him moving away from it. I've been going back and forth on it, but this guy's a former first-round pick. You can't bail on these guys. And by the way, he had a good season. Is he a great player? No. He's an above average to good player, and you just don't walk away from these guys.
All right, I guess a very big question this offseason will be Jason Kelce's future, because obviously he's been the veteran center. It's a very important spot on that line. They don't really have – I guess they have options in-house, but they don't have that guy who's a center. They're going to have to move somebody most likely to fill that spot. So what do we know about Jason Kelce's plans for next year?
Yeah, so a couple things here, and it plays in a little bit of what you were talking about. I don't believe that Kelce's replacement is on the roster right now. I know they like Nate Herbig, but I don't believe they think he's ready to be a full-time starter. Did a good job, by the way. He could play center or guard. They definitely found something in him as a pretty good backup, and now they know he could start if you need him to start for a specific amount of time, but there's nothing official here. I checked into it this week, but my sense is, it's just my sense. In the end, when he makes his decision, I believe he'll play rather than retire. Again, he's not announced anything. I checked into it. He hasn't said he hasn't told anyone anything yet for sure. Just my sense from checking into it the last couple of weeks that better chance that he plays than retires. And I also don't think if he's coming back, I don't see him playing. I can't see him playing for another team. He lives here now. His family's here. His friends are here. I just don't see him moving on here. But Jason Kelce is a pretty remarkable story, former 6th-round pick. And look, another Pro Bowler. We could argue whether he should have made the Pro Bowl or not, but I expect we're going to hear something more next week. I don't think this is going to – either way, guys, I think we're going to hear something very, very soon on Jason Kelce.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm wondering if he decides he comes back, does he do that because maybe he thinks the team has a chance to be halfway? Like, do you come back thinking the team's going to be a disaster?
Yeah. Mike, my understanding was that at the end of the season, other than that elbow injury, which was fairly significant, I don't know how the heck this guy did it. It's a pretty bad elbow injury, but he was able to play through it, and he's rehabbed it pretty well. and I heard that he'd felt pretty good to end the season. So, again, just to be clear here, because I'm not saying he's definitely playing.
Yeah.
But if you had to say player, retire, I say he plays.
Okay. Now, that's interesting because if you get him back, and I've said this a bunch, Adam, I want to get your opinion on this. You got Kelsey. You're hoping to have Brooks. You're hoping to have Lane Johnson. You're hoping to have Isaac Seumalo. And then you have the two guys battled out for left tackle. Don't you feel pretty good about that offensive line? And I don't know if you caught Travis Fulgham's tweets today with Jalen Reagor, but they both, one said, our offense will have no issues next year. And then the subtweet from Reagor was, at all.
Really?
Yes.
That's interesting. Well, by the way,
let me bring them up.
Friends.
I wanted to bring them up so that I get them, right. But in other words, the offensive line, said, I am not worried about our offense at all, in all capitals. And Reagor wrote back, at all. I don't know if that's a shot at anybody or them just saying the reports of our demise are a little exaggerated.
Right. Well, okay, but here's the issue. Lane Johnson, great player, come off significant surgery. We had reported a couple weeks ago that he felt pretty good. You think the surgery went well and he's doing well with it. That's fine. But he had major ankle surgery. Brandon Brooks coming off of a torn Achilles. Jason Kelsey also. They've got three guys over 30, okay? Seumalo, solid football player, no doubt. Left tackle, the job is open. We fully expect Jordan Mailata to be that guy. By the way, they could extend his contract. I think that'll get done. I think he'll get his contract extended sometime before the season starts. It could be the next month. It could be 6 months from now. But I think he gets his contract extended. And they have Andre Dillard competing for it. So yeah, Mike, if you could tell me if Johnson, Brooks, and Kelsey, if Kelsey's back, if they play 14 games, hell yeah, this is a pretty good offensive line. But you can't tell me that.
Sure, absolutely. And I'm just going, if that line is healthy, it should be pretty good. And then all of a sudden you feel, okay, you might have a much better offense with that line than the line you threw out there last week.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
By the way, there's the tweet for the people watching up on the screen. Fulgham, I'm not worried about our offense at all. Reagor, at all.
I like that. Okay.
Yeah, I actually saw, too, Jalen Reagor tag Jalen Hurts on Instagram with the picture of them dapping up each other, too. So there's something going on right now between it all. But since we're on offensive line, I want to get your thoughts on, because, they drafted Driscoll and he stepped in and did a nice job, and you brought up Herbig as well. Is there future starter roles if we talk about these older guys that end up getting injured? Or are they just more of like hey, you can piece things together with them? Or is their ceiling more of like, hey, these guys, their skill sets, their ceilings, it can possibly be a starter just down the road more?
Hunter, as I understand it, they believe Driscoll could potentially start at right tackle or guard down the line. Now, the thing with him is we had said on our show Inside the Birds, over the summer, the thing we were hearing is he needed to get bigger physically. He needed an offseason to build his body up. And that still holds true. He got hurt late in the season, but they really think a lot of him. Mosher had said on our show that he was hearing that Stoutland, the offensive line coach, was very high on him. So this fourth-round pick has a chance to be, at worst, a 6 offensive lineman. Their swing guard, right tackle of the future, or potentially a starter. They may. Everything we've heard on him is pretty good so far.
Adam Caplan, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. The Inside the Birds all-season podcast drops Mondays and Thursdays at 6 a.m. So you can get all the latest on the Eagles. Of course, free agency, the draft coming up. I will, real quick, before we move into some NFL stuff, because off-season's here, we're going to get a lot of NFL stuff from Adam, who does a great job covering the league all over as well. And there's so many great stories out there. But
I know.
Yesterday, Mel Kiper's mock draft had Jamar Chase at number 6. If you were to get a sit-down with Howie Roseman right now, what answer do you think he would say of position they value the most at that spot?
I don't think he would look at it that way. I think it's whatever their board – the way it works in the National Football League is you stack your board, okay? They use the Baltimore/New England point system. I think it's something like – let's say the highest number is 8. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I know it's somewhere around 8, right?
Yep.
If he's a 7.5 and Surtain is a 7.47, they're taking Jamar Chase. That's what they're supposed to do. By the way, both positions have to be of need. So you can't go wrong with either player. Now, Pitts from my neck of the woods at Abington, PA, the tight end from Florida, I'm sure he's very high on their grades. I'm sure he's a top 10 grade from them. It has to be because he's so gifted and so special. To me, if it's Pitts, and we'll obviously talk about more in the weeks to come because we're over 2 months from the draft, but if it's Pitts, it's Surtain and Chase, what's the tight end is less of a need. It's just not. Goddard's their guy, tight end. Ertz is going to be moving on at some point in the near future. We think. We still believe so. So it comes down to whatever the grade is, and that's that. Oh, by the way, that's the way they should do it. Unfortunately, as we saw with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside 2 years ago, we don't think they went exactly by the way it should have gone.
Is that how you end up taking a quarterback in round 2? Was his grade number that high?
I would bet, Mike. Do I know at absolute certainty exactly where they had him graded? No, but I know in our reporting we know that most teams had third and fourth round grades on him. Hearing Roseman talk after that draft last year, it sure seemed like there was a guy they knew that they didn't want to risk. In fact, I'm sure this is the case because he said it in his own way. They didn't want to risk not getting him with their late third round picks, so they had to take him in the second round. That's simple as that.
All right, let's go and take a look around the NFL with Adam Caplan, NFL insider, InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, Russell Wilson has not demanded a trade, Adam, but he already has destinations that he wouldn't mind visiting possibly. How does this happen? This is a bizarre story.
Yeah, and look, the problem is the Seahawks and Wilson's agent, Mark Rodgers, they've had sort of a frosty relationship. When Rodgers, I remember reporting when I was at ESPN, gosh, was that 4 years ago? Whatever it was, his second two extensions ago, I had reported that he was asking for a 4-year fully guaranteed contract, I think for $100 million. And the Seahawks said no immediately, that no one's ever done a contract like that before. 4 years. Now, Kirk Cousins got the best quarterback contract in NFL history for quarterback. If you look at structure.
You got a guaranteed deal, too.
Right. And Wilson's quite frankly was better. His agent, what he wanted was way better, and they weren't doing that. And his agent's a baseball agent, Mark Rodgers. He doesn't really have any NFL players, but Wilson, as you know, is a pretty good baseball player. So, you know what? Here's the issue that I'm told by multiple sources on Wilson. He respects Pete Carroll in a big way. He doesn't have anything issue with him personally, but he wants to control that offense. They're a run-based offense. They'll always have been with Pete Carroll. I had a report before the season started that Pete finally gave in. They were going to come out throwing, not running, and they sure as heck did. Their pass run ratio for the first half of their first 8 games, 63% pass, 37% run. Unfortunately, the second half of the season, their first half play calls were 58.6% pass, 41.4 run. So you saw them pass it less, by the way, score less, and his completion percentage went down, and he was not in a rhythm. Now, my understanding is the Seahawks believe that part of it was the coverage they got because, it was bombs away to Metcalf and Lockett, and that was part of it. But teams are playing cover 2, taking away the deep ball, and, Russell doesn't check the ball down. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like to do that, kind of like Carson Wentz, ironically. And Wilson struggled the final 8 games. He did not play well.
I'm starting to see a trend here. Wentz and Doug, and now Wilson and Pete Carroll, Rodgers and the Packers, and Deshaun Watson, too. There is a trend here, but I know that Deshaun Watson is a little bit of a different situation. Any update on that? Maybe a trade package conversation? Anything along the lines of Deshaun Watson right now?
Yeah, this is a quote from a high-ranking personnel source who's talked to Nick Cassera, the GM of the Texans, multiple times. Quote, "We've talked to Nick more than once. Nothing has changed. When the subject changes when we bring up Watson." So what they do is, because there's a cat and mouse game, like a team that called the Raiders for Derek Carr when they were exchanging names that might be available, the personnel source who spoke to Mike Mayock never brought up Carr, and this guy didn't bring up Carr. But when he brought up Mariota, it was very clear that he was available. But what you do is if you want to play, you ask about him. But Casario would not talk about the name Deshaun Watson. He changed the subject. So still, he's not available right now. But if he gets traded, folks, I do believe it'll be very close to the draft.
Adam Caplan with the latest. And, of course, all your Eagles Inside the Birds drops Monday. The NFL, follow him at Caplan NFL to get more NFL news. And, of course, football at 4 every Friday right here with Adam from Inside the Birds. Jeff is back on Monday, and that's when the next Inside the Birds will drop at 6 a.m. Make that a part of your morning commute. All right, Adam, have a great weekend, pal.
All right, boys. Thank you.
All right. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And, of course, Football at 4 is brought to you by Dr. Lyle and Beck. Whoa! Got Bro's right my face up on this screen here. There we go. Fix that back up. For everything from skincare and cosmetic surgery, go to iloveLyleBack.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle and Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4.